In Bleach, power decides everything. But what if power wasn't taken, but destined to be given? Meet Jugram Haschwalth, the man who stood in a god's shadow, wielding a power unlike any Quincy. Controlling fortune itself, he was both executioner and judge. Yet his own fate was never his to decide. Betrayal, tragedy, and a bond shattered by destiny. This is the untold story of Bleach's most underrated Quincy. Join me as I do a breakdown of why Jugram is the most underrated Quincy in Bleach. Section 1. Jugram's unique ability, the balance. At first glance, Jugram appears to be just another high-ranking Sternritter, but his abilities tell a far more complex story. Unlike most Quincy's who absorb racial from their surroundings to fuel their powers, Jugram possesses something fundamentally different. He wields the balance, an ability that allows him to redistribute fortune and misfortune. What does that mean? Well, let's say his opponent lands a lucky hit or defends against his attack. Jugram can transfer that luck away, ensuring that they experience misfortune instead. In a world where battles often come down to split-second decisions and momentary advantages, controlling fortune itself is nothing short of godlike. This ability is what makes him so formidable, as seen in the second season of Bleach Thousand Year Blood War, where Jugram eliminates Tsung-Du and BG9 using the balance. Here, we saw Tsung-Du blocks Jugram's initial attempt to kill him, but he uses the balance, allowing him to reverse Tsung-Du's fortune, thereby killing him in the process. His control over fate is absolute, and those who stand against him often fall victim to the cruel irony of their own misfortune. The underrated nature of Jugram is evident here, as many overlook just how terrifyingly decisive this ability is in combat. And that's not all. As Yhwach's other half, Jugram also possesses the Almighty, but not in the same way Yhwach does. While Yhwach can see and alter the future, Jugram's power works differently. When Yhwach sleeps, Jugram acts as a conduit, allowing him to use the power of the Almighty temporarily. But here's the catch. Jugram himself cannot see the future like Yhwach can. Instead, he acts more like a judge, executing the fate that's already been decided. This makes him terrifying because his power is absolute. Once something is deemed misfortunate, there's no escaping it. However, despite this incredible power, Jugram's version of the Almighty is far from perfect. At the end of the recent season of Bleach Thousand Year Blood War, Jugram attacked Oryu, insisting Oryu must prove his loyalty to Yhwach by eliminating Ichigo and his friends, and during their conversation he expressed surprise at seeing Oryu filled with hope compared to earlier, something his own version of the Almighty could not foresee prior to their battle. The very fact that Jugram was surprised by this clearly reveals a flaw in the Almighty when wielded by him. It is not truly omniscient. Unlike Yhwach, who can actively perceive and alter the future, Jugram's version of the Almighty lacks that all-seeing control, showing that while he may execute fate, he doesn't necessarily understand it completely. This duality makes Jugram unique among all characters in Bleach. Not only does he possess his own formidable abilities, but he also temporarily wields the power of the man who conquered Soul Society and challenged the Soul King. Yet, despite this incredible power, Jugram cannot do what most Quincy's take for granted, absorb racial from his surroundings. His power, like Yhwach's, is centered on giving rather than taking. Section 2. The Broken Friendship, Jugram and Bazz-B. To understand Jugram's true depth, we must look to his past. Long before he became the cold, calculating, Sternritter Grandmaster, Jugram was simply a young boy who formed an unlikely friendship with Bazz-B. Their bond, forged through shared hardships, represents one of the most compelling and heartbreaking relationships in the entire series. Now, if there's one thing that makes Jugram one of the most tragic characters in Bleach, it's his past with Bazz-B. These two weren't just comrades in the Sternritter, they were childhood friends who dreamed of taking down Yhwach together. But fate had something else in store. Jugram was born without the ability to absorb racial, something that made him an outcast among Quincy's. But Bazz-B saw something in him, and the two of them trained together, pushing each other to survive. They swore to take revenge on Yhwach for destroying their home. But when the time came to join the Wandenrake, it wasn't Bazz-B with his years of dedication and training who caught the Emperor's attention. It was Jugram. Why? Because Jugram was Yhwach's other half. Unlike other Quincy's who take power, Jugram was the only one who could give power, reflection of Yhwach's own ability. From that moment, their friendship was shattered. Bazz-B watched his best friend stand beside the very man they swore to kill. And Jugram? He had no choice but to accept his fate. This moment fractured their friendship beyond repair. Bazz-B, who had protected and trained Jugram, watched as his friend was elevated to the right hand of the very man they had sworn to kill. And Jugram, bound by the chains of fate and loyalty, accepted his role, severing the only meaningful connection he had ever known. Years later, during their final battle, we see just how tragic their story really is. Bazz-B, burning with rage, challenges Jugram, not just because of their past, but because of Jugram's silence in the face of Yhwach's brutal purge of the Sternritters. Jugram knew that Yhwach would use Oswalin to wipe out the Sternritters left behind in Soul Society, draining their power to fuel his own. Yet Jugram, despite his high status, did nothing to stop it. To make it worse, Jugram had always avoided fighting Bazz-B over the years, as if he were dodging the inevitable confrontation. This betrayal cut deeper than any wound, intensifying Bazz-B's fury during their fight. Jugram, ever composed, fought back, but there was one moment that showed his lingering connection to his old friend. He called Bazz-B by his full name Bazz-Black. It was a rare glimpse of the boy who once stood beside Bazz-B, a subtle sign that despite everything, Jugram still acknowledged their shared past. But in the end, fate was already decided. Jugram kills Bazz-B, without even having to go all out, proving just how underratedly strong he really was. It was a heartbreaking end to a brotherhood that once stood against all odds, one of Bleach's most tragic and compelling rivalries.
Haschwalth.
Section 3. The Tragic Shadow, Jugram's Fate under Yhwach. Now here's the big question. Was Jugram truly loyal to Yhwach, or was he just another pawn in the king's game? On the surface, Jugram appears to be completely devoted to Yhwach, carrying out his orders without question. But if you look deeper, you'll see that Jugram wasn't blindly following, he was accepting his fate. Unlike Bazz-B, who fought against destiny, Jugram embraced it. He believed that everything happens for a reason, and as Yhwach's other half, he saw himself as an extension of Yhwach's intent rather than an individual with his own desires. But here's the thing, despite all of this, Jugram never received Yhwach's full trust. When Yhwach was distributing his powers, he chose Oryu Ishida as his successor, not Jugram. But what makes this truly tragic is Jugram's awareness of his role. He understands that he will never be more than Yhwach's shadow, the other half that exists only to complement the Emperor. Despite his immense power and high rank, Jugram lacks true agency. He can give power but never fully claim it as his own. In the end, Jugram's fate reflects the cruel irony of his ability. The man who could balance fortune and misfortune for others never found balance in his own life. Torn between his past with Bazz-B and his duty to Yhwach, between immense power and fundamental limitations, Jugram stands as one of the most complex and tragically underrated characters in Bleach. So, is Jugram Haschwalth truly the most underrated Quincy in Bleach? The evidence speaks for itself. A man with the power to control fortune, temporarily wield the might of Yhwach, and serve as the linchpin of the entire Wandenrake operation, yet often overshadowed in fan discussions by flashier characters. His story reminds us that true power in the Bleach universe isn't just about who can create the biggest explosion or defeat the most enemies. Sometimes it's about who bears the heaviest burden, who walks the most difficult path, and who sacrifices the most of themselves for their cause. In a series filled with tragic figures, Jugram Haschwalth stands apart, the perfect balance, the loyal shadow, and perhaps the most compelling Quincy ever created. What do you think about Jugram Haschwalth? Is he truly underrated? Or does he get the recognition he deserves? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the fascinating world of Bleach.
言ったはずだ。お前が何と答えるかは見えているぞ。終わらせるぞ。石田瓜生。陛下がお目覚めに